A big thank you to Jero for sponsoring today's video on Patreon. Elas versus Carador. A 4-lander with some Wraths for us to get through the early game, so yeah, that might be alright, we'll keep it. Our opponent's had to mulligan down to 6, which is noteworthy. We'll get out a tap land. Draw into another aristocrat effect in Blood Artist. I think we're fine to get down our commander here. Skull Clamp from our opponent with nothing to actually Skull Clamp, unless they start going after Spore Frog. Not likely to deal a lot of combat damage in this deck, thankfully. Draw into a Skull Clamp of our own, which is superb with Bloodghast. So I think we just get down the Bloodghast this turn. Gain a life when our creature enters play thanks to Elas, and we'll swing in with our commander here. Our opponent takes it, so they might be looking for Skull Clamping the Spore Frog next turn. They're at 4 cards in hand. We will leave it there. Don't want to play out the Skull Clamp unless we've got a use for it immediately. Alright, and our opponent decides to scoop with a Spore Frog and a Skull Clamp in play. Didn't even bother to clamp it. Elas versus Jodah this time. We do have a 2-lander, can hopefully get into a 3rd for Read the Bones, so we'll try this one. We are on the draw. Managed to get into a land, so we'll just throw that out and pass. Our opponent's just getting down tap lands at the moment. Draw into another land, so we've got 4, can definitely get into Read the Bones here. I think we play the Corpse Knight, ready for our commander coming into play. Holding up 3 mana now, and we draw into a Demonic Tutor. So I think we're okay to... let's swing in first, see if we can get any removal out of our opponent's hand. Managed to hit them for 2. Yeah, let's go back up to 7 cards with the Read the Bones. There's a Verdant Catacombs and a Bloodghast, so we could try the whole Skull Clamp Bloodghast thing again, seeing as how we didn't get to do it on the last game. Holding up 3 mana again after cracking a Terramorphic Expanse. Citywide Bust will be good against our opponent's creatures because they'll all get buffed by the Jodah. So drop the Urborg here. We'll go for Demonic Tutor first. Demonic Tutor grabs us, where is it? The Skull Clamp. And then we'll play out the Bloodghast. If they wipe the board, then we can just play out a land and get it back into play again next turn. Our opponent loses a life when that comes into play, thanks to the Corpse Knight. We will swing in. We see Jodah come into play, a 6/6 at the moment. I'm sure with 6 cards in hand they'll be able to cascade into a bunch of stuff next turn. A Cryptghast with an Urborg in play is very good. Yeah, we've got quite a few things we can do here. Let's go for our commander here. Our opponent loses a life to the Corpse Knight again. Now we can play the Skull Clamp. Equip the Skull Clamp to the Bloodghast. And that will kill it off and have us draw 2 cards. It will trigger the Elas as well, so our opponent will lose a life. Draws us into a couple more lands, so play out the... We're just going to clamp again here. Vault of Champions in here. This is actually meant as a multiplayer deck, and I've left Vault of Champions in there accidentally. Let's play the Swamp out, and Bloodghast comes back into play, which triggers Corpse Knight. We gain a life from Elas as well. And then we're going to have to discard some cards here, I think, but we'll go for the Bloodghast, draw the cards while we've got the opportunity to. Could reanimate some stuff with Sun Titan. Alright, draw into Dreadhorde General. So let's pass at that. Get rid of a couple of lands to hand size. Noteworthy that Plaza of Heroes is in play now, so we'll have to watch out for them holding up 3 mana into that. The Scarab God into play here, and they cascade into the Hand of Vecna. So obviously trying to assemble Vecna here. I think I'll hold off on the board wipe for as long as possible. We'll take a hit from the Jodah here. So swinging in, dealing 7 commander damage to us. And we draw into a Fetid Heath, so I think dropping down the Cryptghast sooner than later would be a good idea. So let's play out the Cryptghast. And then we'll have 4 mana available to us thanks to having swamps in play. We'll get down the Verdant Catacombs after we gain some life and hit our opponent. Playing the Verdant Catacombs will trigger landfall on the Bloodghast, of course, triggering both of our aristocrats again. Make Ores of Mana from the Scrubland. Clamp onto Bloodghast. Draws us into a Vamp Tutor and a Knight's Whisper, so let's crack the Verdant Catacombs. We can get a Godless Shrine with that. Shock that into play, go down to 31. Triggers the Bloodghast again, of course, which triggers our 2 creatures again. And then maybe we can just tutor up a 2-mana spot removal spell or a 1-mana spot removal spell. Yeah, let's go after their Jodah here. Not going to extort. We'll grab a Go for the Throat here. Have a lot of destruction spells because the exile effects don't trigger our aristocrat stuff, so we'll have to have that in our hand while we can't cast it, unfortunately. With 1 mana left, we can throw that on the Crypt Ghast, assuming that they're going to try and point some removal at Crypt Ghast maybe, and we'll pass at that. Hopefully we'll have double mana available to us next turn. We're fine discarding Night's Whisper and the Fetid Heath there. Might be an idea for us to block the Jodah with Corpse Knight, and then we can get it back out with the Sun Titan next turn. Sun Titan will go down to the citywide bust, we need to remember. Anyway, they play out a Chromatic Lantern, which obviously isn't a legendary spell. That is, though, a Zera, the Golden Sting, and that lands them into a Lonis Cryptozoologist, so definitely looking at a one-sided board wipe with the citywide bust. This is a 7/7 flyer with haste as well, so yeah, I think we're going to have to block some commander damage here, unfortunately. Holding back their Scarab God, surprisingly. An egg counter going onto the Crypt Ghast there, so they'll get an insect when that dies. We'll block with the Corpse Knight and take 7 damage from the Zera. That triggers the Elas Ilkor, our opponent loses a life. Okay, managed to stick our double mana, drawing into a Viscerous Seer. So at this point, I think we definitely want to get down the Sun Titan. But I think first we have to Wrath. We actually don't have double white available to us this turn. I think citywide bust is going to be the most important thing here. And we'll just have to hope that our opponent doesn't scoop to it. I have a feeling that they will. Do not pay into the Extort. The Scarab God going to trigger. That can go back into their hand at the end step. Haven't scooped immediately, thankfully. Play out the Bloodstained Mire. Brings back the Bloodghast. And then I think we finally get down Life Insurance now that we've bought ourselves a little bit of time. That can make us some white mana. So now we tap down a Swamp for a couple of mana, throw the Skull Clamp onto the Bloodghast yet again. And now we're triggering Skull Clamp, Elas Ilkor, and we're losing a life and gaining a treasure to Life Insurance. Draws us into Elspeth Sun's Champion and Dark Prophecy. Crack the Bloodstained Mire, and we'll get out a tapped white mana with this. Triggers the Bloodghast yet again, and we'll take that floating mana and go for the Skull Clamp once more, making a treasure and drawing a couple of cards. And now we see Talisman of Hierarchy. So we'll play out the Talisman here. Not going to extort on either of these things. Getting closer and closer to that though with the more mana that we make. So let's put Skull Clamp back on the Crypt Ghast with the Talisman. And then we'll swing in for some damage. Then at the end of the turn, I think we're fine to discard the Dark Prophecy. We have to be careful of our life total. Your net, Cryptic Sovereign, we can still go after that with the Go for the Throat. And we still have our double mana held up. Orzhov's Signet is even more mana for us. So we'll get that into play by tapping 1 Swamp down. And then I think it would be a good idea to get down this Sun Titan. Sun Titan entering can bring us in a land, I think. We'll go for the Fetid Heath, because we want to continue abusing the Bloodghast shenanigans and make a land every turn at least. Skull Clamp goes on to Bloodghast. We'll try and actually draw into a land so that we can play one this turn. Well, it's not a land, but it's more mana. We'll play out the Mana Crypt. Wonder if we should start paying the Extort soon, actually. Let's go for the Throat on our opponent's commander, see if they scoop to this. Alright, and the game just quit out really quickly there, so I just got thrown back into the lobby at lightning speed, so I'm assuming that they scooped to that. Okay, I think that last one became pretty convincing in the end. We'll try again against Exava. And that's a pretty good one. We've got card draw and a tutor, so keep on that. Also on the draw. Draw into a land is really good, so Godless Shrine in tapped and pass. And there we see Collective Brutality, so they are not escalating that. Target opponent reveals their hand, instant or sorcery, and we discard it, so they'll probably get rid of the tutor here. And that is exactly what they do. We weren't going to be casting that anytime soon anyway, I don't think. They now do not know about Read the Bones. We will play a Plains, and I think we're fine to go for a Night's Whisper here. So now there's 3 cards in hand that they don't know about. Maybe a good idea to get down Dreadhorde Invasion next turn. Draw into another land in Isolated Chapel, so Yeah, let's go Dreadhorde Invasion. Our opponent's really going to struggle with this one because it is an enchantment up against a Rakdos player who won't do too well against enchantments. Throw the Phyrexian Tower down because they know about that, and they only know about 3 cards in our hand at this point, so we're probably going Solemn Simulacrum next turn. Now seeing their commander, and they swing in at us with a 4/4. We'll lose a life and gain a zombie token. It's a Flooded Strand for us, so we could take advantage of the Flooded Strand and get out a tapped Snowland so we don't draw into it later when we're desperate, and get out Solemn this turn. I think that's okay. So we'll sacrifice the army token, throw down the Solemn Simulacrum, and then it's Flooded Strand into play and we'll crack it straight away as well. I don't think they're going to play around with swords or anything. Continuing to swing in, we will save ourselves as much commander damage as possible, especially against a hasty commander. So blocking there and drawing a card gets us into Cabal Coffers. We've got a decent number of swamps available to us. I don't think I'll play that anytime soon though. Alright, one of the few ways that Rakdos can deal with one of our enchantments, and that is Feed the Swarm. A Cathar Commando for us. We can play in with Flash if we want. I'd rather blow something up with that if we're able to though. So maybe playing out some Aristocrat effects, and then we can double block on this and force them to sacrifice it and reanimate our stuff from a living death. Yeah, that might be an idea. So throw down Scrubland. We will play our commander. They are holding up Terminate mana, so they might have something for us. But we'll go for Suture Priest, gain a life to our commander, and with that we can hold up Cathar Commando and surprise them with that. Might be able to just gang up on their commander if we want to. We've also got Death Touch on our commander, of course. But like I said, I'd rather use Cathar Commando as an instant speed Reclamation Sage if I can. Well, there's a Fire Covenant, so we can definitely still block with the Cathar Commando. Glad I held that up now. And we will not put our commander back in the command zone. Each opponent does lose 1 life because we had a creature die there. So wait for them to declare their attacks, and yeah, we'll just block some commander damage. Probably going for Living Death next turn. Okay, managing to get an Abrade out of their hand, that's really good. It's not blowing up any of our really good artifacts. So we'll take some commander damage here. Not the end of the world that we're taking this hit for 4. We're managing to get a couple of removal spells out of their hand this turn, and it still sets us up nicely for a Living Death. So draw into Tainted Field. Yeah, so if we go Cabal Coffers here, we can tap down into the Cabal Coffers, make 4 mana, and then we've got 3 mana held up for Read the Bones, so we'll go at Living Death first, which reanimates all our stuff, forces them to sacrifice their commander, which does have haste, so yeah, they shouldn't be giving up on us too easily here. But trigger all of our stuff a bunch of times. Solemn obviously going to trigger on us as well, because we lost that previously. We'll get another swamp into play. And then it's a Read the Bones for us, and go for the Throat is good. Dark Prophecy would be good, as long as they don't wipe the board next turn, which they may well do. We'll put both on top. Thought Vessel from our opponent. Yeah, and I had a feeling they'd have a board wipe because they didn't just scoop straight away there. So Toxic Deluge going to take out our stuff. We will put our commander back in the command zone this time. Again, forcing them to use all this stuff. Get a card draw from the Solemn Simulacrum. We've taken them down to 29. That is a Grand Crescendo, which wouldn't have helped us against the Toxic Deluge, but once again we've made them get rid of that at least. And then we draw a card for the turn, which is excellent after a board wipe. Elspeth Sun's Champion. So throw a land down. 5 mana on the Cabal Coffers now. Throw down the Elspeth. We'll get our commander into play here as well. Then plus, and make some tokens with the Elspeth, which gains us some life, puts us back up to 36, holding up the Phyrexian Tower now for the Go for the Throat. And once again, would like to get down Dark Prophecy, because as long as we're gaining 3 life a turn, that effectively pays for the life we'll lose to the soldier tokens dying. That does entail us leaving our Elas core in play though. Our opponent gets down his own Phyrexian Tower, 2 cards in hand over there. And down comes the commander again, deciding to make that unable to block again. So a first strike with haste, we just block with a soldier token. It doesn't have trample or anything, just first strike and haste, so defend our commander, and we'll leave their commander in play. A Pitiless Plunderer, pretty good with all these tokens that we're making. So plus on the Elspeth again. Go up to 39 life, and then it is this Pitiless Plunderer. We'll throw down the Tainted Field. Pitiless Plunderer does trigger on creature tokens as well, so that's going to do a lot of work for us potentially. We'll make some more black mana by sacrificing a soldier token, which will drain our opponent, and we'll make a treasure token, start ramping a little bit, and that allows us into some decent card draw potentially in Dark Prophecy, which is pretty bad news for a Rakdos player, because like I said before, I doubt they'll have too many Feed the Swarm effects. Well, seeing us out, our opponent definitely can't block. Now that it's tapped, we'll start chipping away at them in combat. Don't think there's any real need to go for the throat here, to be honest. You find some prisoners, exile up to 3 cards from a target opponent's library, and choose one of them. So we'll have to hope they don't get anything really good here. Exiling from the top cards, Cartel Aristocrat is the only card that is of any relevance there. The other ones are just some lands for them, really. So just deciding to take a land from us, and they do play and crack that straight away. Swinging in with their commander at our Elspeth again. We'll just make the 1 treasure token here, I think. We can make 2. Both of them die. It obviously triggers the Plunderer twice. Might be that we want to tap a bunch of mana into Grand Crescendo, and that triggers the Dark Prophecy a couple of times as well, so we'll draw more cards as well as drain our opponent more with the Elas Core. Drawing us into Yawgmoth Ramphysician, we'll probably see a scoop from our opponent. Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth into the Cabal Coffers, they're 2 really, really good draws. Now seeing a Jeska's Will, we could reduce the number of cards in our hand by 2 here, but I don't want my opponent to scoop because it's a pretty good game so far from a viewing perspective, I think. Deadly Rollick is exile, so they could get rid of something relevant there. And then there's Reanimate as well. So the game might have just become interesting. Yeah, Pitiless Plunderer going down here. At least the Deadly Rollick isn't going onto the Yawgmoth. And then Reanimate onto our Suture Priest. Yeah, we can soon get rid of that with the Yawgmoth. Not really worried about that one. 1 card in hand and 4 red mana floating at the moment. Just letting the red mana go down, so we'll hold the cards in our hand until we're really desperate. Into Verdant Catacombs, we definitely play the Urborg here. Plus on the Elspeth. And that will cancel out the Elas Core. The Suture Priest will lose 3 life and gain 3 life as well. So staying at 38. Then we'll tap down Cabal Coffers for a lot of mana here, I imagine. Yep, just like that. Thanks to dropping the Urborg this turn, we now get 11 mana, so let's drop the Yawgmoth. Seeing both Urborg and Yawgmoth in the same turn is very fitting. So once again, lose a life and gain a life. Point the Yawgmoth at our own Suture Priest. Sacrifice a soldier to do that, so now we start losing life. Our opponent loses 1 to Elas Core. We lose 1 to Dark Prophecy and our Yawgmoth. That is a Dictate of Erebos though, so that is really bad news for our opponent. Okay, there's a Bolt Bend, so can change the target of an ability, and they're just going to point that at the Yawgmoth, I imagine. Yeah, whatever, we'll just let them do that. They've got no cards in hand now. Okay, pointing it at our commander instead. Like I said, not really worried about that. Drawing to Austere Command. Now it is Dictate of Erebos. Now we have to be careful with Grave Pact, Dictate of Erebos effects, because if we point Yawgmoth at something and they sacrifice it to the Dictate of Erebos, it actually negates the card draw, so not going to point any removal at any of the creatures with the Yawgmoth. Just going to have no targets and sacrifice a creature with it. Draw into Field of the Dead for next turn. And when we sacrifice a creature, it triggers the Dictate of Erebos. Okay, I'm not sure which trap my opponent is referring to there. Yeah, okay. Might have been the Bolt Bend that they were referring to. Maybe they're having a bit of fun with us. They are being a great sport and playing it out. So sacrifice a soldier token. We got them to sacrifice their commander there. And we've drawn into Cryptghast with an Urborg in play, which is a lot of mana for us. So I think we can get out the Cryptghast here, because we do have the Grand Crescendo available to us. Now swinging our opponent, and we'll pass over to our opponent. Over the next couple of turns we've got the Limit Break on the Elspeth, +2/+2, and creatures we control have flying. So we could do that next turn, but I'd rather keep her in play so that she can make 3 3/3 flying creatures every turn. Our opponent has one card in hand, admirably playing this out. That is an Exava, and they're allowing it to block this time. So we can actually win next turn, can't we? Let's go for the Grand Crescendo here. Do something a little bit unusual in this deck. Tapping out all of our mana into that, including the treasure tokens, so X is 13. We will not extort on our opponent. Going to make all of our creatures indestructible and make 13 1/1 creature tokens, which gains us 13 life, go up to 46. And then draw into a swamp. We'll minus down with the Elspeth. And we get an emblem for the rest of the game. +2/+2 and flying on all of our stuff. Our opponent looks like he's being a great sport here, so turn everything in sideways, and that is the victory for us, I think. Yeah, and our opponent is being a good sport about it, was just having a bit of fun with us before, I think. So there we go, down to -44. Not often, and once again being kicked out of the game immediately. Magic Online's being weird tonight. Yeah, it's not often that you get to win with combat damage in this deck, so once the opportunity arises, you have to take advantage of it. Massive thank you to my opponent for playing that one out. He was obviously a really good sport and had plenty of interaction for us, just couldn't get into his card draw unfortunately. It looks like a very capable deck, just didn't have as much luck as we did. Anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed this game. Be sure to leave it a thumbs up if you did to help push it through to other potential viewers. And a massive thank you to the patrons as well who keep me around and help me out building these decks. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.